Day 69 of the war in Gaza, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan arrived today for key meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the war cabinet, with talks focused on the conduct of the war to defeat Hamas in Gaza. This is amid heavy and ongoing house-to-house fighting in remaining Hamas strongholds in the north and south of the terrorist enclave. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Day 69 of the war in Gaza. On the ground, clashes are intense in the northern Gazan town of Shejaiya, a day after 10 soldiers were killed in a Hamas ambush. The IDF says that some 350 Hamas operatives have been killed in the terrorist stronghold since the start of the month. IDF troops are going alley to alley, door to door, engaging terrorists, and will continue doing so until the entire Hamas Shejaiya battalion is dismantled. The army said each day of warfare brings them closer to the goal. Intense fighting is also underway in Jabalia in the north and Khan Yunis in the south. In Khan Yunis, troops from the Madlan unit raided several locations and found weapons, including grenades. Soldiers also destroyed 2 tunnel shafts, an arms warehouse, and a rocket launching pit. Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Chief Sullivan arrived in Israel to meet the Israeli war cabinet, with the IDF continuing its steady progress toward the defeat of Hamas. The U.S. is pressing for more humanitarian aid for Gaza and a minimum of civilian casualties.
Clearly, he's going to talk to them about progress on the battlefield, how it's going. He's going to talk to them about reductions in civilian harm. He's going to talk to them about trying to get another pause in place so that we can get more hostages out. He's going to talk to them about the need to get humanitarian assistance, keep that flowing. It has been flowing even when the pause stopped, and I think he'll explore opportunities to see if we can increase that again.
Meanwhile, an odd comment by Hamas Politburo chief Ismail Haniyeh, who is not in Gaza. Haniyeh said any plan for post-war Gaza that does not involve the Palestinian terror group is just a delusion. In a speech aired on Hamas-affiliated Al-Aqsa TV, Haniyeh said he is open to talks for ending the war and what he called putting the Palestinian house in order. Senior Hamas official Musa Abu Marzouk had a similar, desperate message for survival, saying Hamas could now recognize the State of Israel in order to end the war. Abu Marzouk told the Qatari site Al Monitor that following the stance of the PLO, Hamas could recognize Israel in exchange for a permanent ceasefire. The Israeli response was clear.
ואני רוצה שתעביר גם הלאה עד אחרון החיילים. אנחנו ממשיכים עד הסוף, עד הניצחון, עד השמדת החמאס. שלא יהיה שום ספק בעניין הזה. זה חשוב, זה מסר שאני רוצה שיגיע לכל חייל וחייל שלנו.
Israel is in the war to win it, and Hamas has 2 choices: surrender or die.
They deny the kidnapping of our children, the murder of our grandchildren, the rape of our daughters. The new Nazis we face today will stop at nothing to destroy civilization as we know it. The World Jewish Congress was created exactly for these times like this, so every Jew can fall asleep at night knowing they are safe in their own home. We are a voice for the Jewish people everywhere. We are the World Jewish Congress.
And the IDF has announced the death of a soldier during fighting in the southern Gaza Strip, bringing the toll of slain troops in the ground offensive against Hamas to 116. Master Sergeant in the reserves Elisha Lowenstern, 38, from Harish. He was killed, and another soldier of his battalion was seriously hurt after their tank was hit by an anti-tank guided missile. And moving on, when U.S. President Joe Biden visited Israel after the October 7th massacre, he said that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. But a new poll by a Palestinian think tank proves otherwise. The poll has found overwhelming support for Hamas among Palestinians in both Gaza and the West Bank. The details in the following report. A new poll among Palestinians found that nearly 3/4, 72%, believe that Hamas was correct to launch its October 7th attack, in which terrorists raped, tortured, and murdered more than 1,200 people in Israel. The poll was conducted by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, a Ramallah-based think tank, and surveyed 1,231 Palestinian adults in the West Bank and Gaza between November 22nd and December 2nd, 2023. The survey found the overwhelming majority of Palestinians said they do not believe Hamas committed the October 7th atrocities. Only 7%, 1% in the West Bank and 16% in the Gaza Strip said it did. The poll also found overwhelming support for armed struggle against Israel, with more than 60% of Palestinians supporting this. In the West Bank, this figure rises to 70% support. When asked to rate their satisfaction with Palestinian leaders and actors, 72% of Palestinians expressed satisfaction with Hamas, followed by the role played by Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, at 69%, and 51% for its political leader in Qatar, Ismail Haniyeh. And only 14% expressed satisfaction with the Palestinian Authority and 11% with PA President Mahmoud Abbas. And if new presidential elections were held today, Hamas would receive the majority with 51% of the vote, while 88% of Palestinians say they think PA President Abbas should resign. The results of the poll and support expressed for Hamas raise very serious questions for the U.S. plans for Gaza the day after the war and a possible future peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians. And joining us now with more on the shocking Palestinian poll is Itamar Marcus, founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So this is a really shocking poll. You know, U.S. President Joe Biden has said that Hamas doesn't represent Palestinians, but this poll, in fact, shows the opposite is true. So what does this mean for any peace deal or for Gaza the day after the war? I mean, what's your assessment of these revelations?
Well, the revelations are very important, and they confirm what was already found a few weeks ago in another poll. In that poll, there was even a more astonishing question. Both polls found about 75% of Palestinians support what Hamas did. But the previous poll also asked the question, are you proud of what's been happening, including the attack and what's going on? And there, 98% of Palestinians said it made them feel proud as Palestinians. So what you had was everybody was thrilled with what happened with the attack and the successful murder of Israelis. I say everyone, 98%. And then 75% supported it because a lot of people in Gaza felt the suffering wasn't worth it. And that was the gap. So what this tells us is that we have a Palestinian population that through all the years of demonization of Jews, brainwashing that with anti-Semitism, brainwashing them that the Jews are the enemy of Allah, today they feel proud when they can do a massacre like this, raping and killing and beheading. This makes them proud. What it means for the future, of course, is very problematic. It means we have a population that really needs detoxification. Interestingly and shockingly, you know, it might be easier in Gaza after the war is over. We're not sure exactly who's going to rule or how it's going to be done, but it's certainly not going to be Hamas, and it's certainly not going to be the Palestinian Authority. With some kind of other rule, it might be easier to detoxify them. In all of these polls, and this is significant, the Palestinians on the West Bank were more extreme than the Palestinians in Gaza. So it could be that Gaza could be a test case how to create a population that's not anti-Israel when there's some new situation after the war.
And why is that, do you think, that actually in the West Bank we're seeing more extremism than in Gaza? You know, you've been on the show many times, you've talked about sort of the incitement that's coming out from Palestinian leaders, but why do you think that is?
The Palestinian Authority has completely embraced what Hamas did in Gaza. They don't mention Hamas by name. They talk about what we Palestinians have done. But they have embraced it completely. Palestinian television has had leaders on TV like Jibril Rajoub, who has said this was heroic and epic, what happened on October 7th. Others talked about it a morning of victory and celebration. So because the Palestinian Authority has given its stamp of approval, all the Palestinians see, wait a second, the PA embraced this, Hamas did it, we should be supporting Hamas. The reason why the Gaza Strip isn't supporting, I'm assuming that on October 8th, 9th, and 10th, the Gaza Strip would have been as high as the West Bank. Because they're suffering so much and they realize what Hamas brought on them, a lot of them aren't as extreme in their positions anymore. But in the West Bank, they're just thrilled. I'll tell you another interesting figure. 80% of when Palestinians were asked are they satisfied with other Arab countries, other regional countries, and the one that got the highest grade of the other countries was Yemen. Yemen is the country that fired missiles on Israel, trying to attack it. Yeah, the Houthis, and they're the ones who got the highest grade. So we see the Palestinian population, West Bank and Gaza, is incredibly extreme today. There's no one who could even begin to think of any of them being peace partners for the future right now.
So that's what I want to ask, because, you know, we've seen years of incitement on the part of Hamas, on the part of the PA, yet there are very few voices, you know, a minority who say that they are against October 7th. Where are these voices? You know, why aren't these voices being amplified? You don't hear them at all. I mean, is there even a Palestinian leader today who's willing to stand up and say, an end, you know, take a stance against incitement, take a stance against violence, take a stance against terror?
There are individual Palestinians, but there's no Palestinian leader who's willing to do it. Again, what happened is that for so many years, the Palestinian Authority has presented killing of Jews as heroic. Literally, the killers of Jews have everything named after them, schools named after them, streets named after them. They're rewarded with high salaries in prison. Everybody believes killing Jews is the right thing to do.
All right, Itamar Marcus, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative, available on the web, Android, and Apple. And U.S. President Joe Biden met with the families of American hostages held by terrorists in Gaza. During the 2-hour meeting, the president reaffirmed his complete commitment to gaining the release of all the 135 people still held by Hamas. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
The families of 8 American hostages held by Hamas came out of the meeting with President Biden, saying that Washington was doing everything within its power, using every tool and connection that they have to bring the hostages home.
The U.S. administration is completely committed to getting the hostages out, the 8 Americans who remain there and the other nearly 130. We have no doubt about that. And today's meeting with President Biden and Secretary Blinken only reinforced that.
We are thankful to the president and to his team, because we know that they are working 24 hours a day, and they are going to work through the holidays, and they are going to do everything they can to make sure that all of our loved ones, real people, come home to us and to the families across the world and in Israel.
The group of 13 Americans and Israelis who met with Biden at the White House have other meetings planned for today on Capitol Hill to continue raising awareness regarding the plight of the hostages now held for 69 days.
The war between Israel and Hamas has spread far beyond Gaza as people worldwide are taking sides in this conflict. In the United States, this is especially noticeable as we've seen near daily protests against Israel from Los Angeles to New York and everywhere in between. And so joining us now in the studio is Yuval David, an Emmy Award-winning actor, filmmaker, news commentator, and activist. He recently hit the streets of Washington, D.C. to hear exactly what people think about this war. Yuval, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, Lidao. It's good to be with you here in studio as opposed to remotely as I patch in from the United States.
Absolutely great to have you. And so, Yuval, I want to ask, you're an Emmy Award-winning actor, a filmmaker, news commentator. Why are you also taking on this role as a pro-Israel activist, especially now? Why is it so important to you personally?
I've been pursuing Jewish activism and advocacy truly since I was a young teenager, in my early teen years, where I was raised to be a proud Jew, to be an educated Jew, and understanding what it actually means to be of the Jewish people and why I need to not only use that expression, never again. Even when I was 13, I said never again isn't enough. It needs to be something positive, like always remember and always take action. Well, throughout my life, I've encountered a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism myself. I've seen hatred and bigotry within other civil rights and social justice movements. The main part of my identity that influences everything that I do as an activist and advocate is my Jewish identity. Now, since October 7th, all of that work that I've done, the battles against anti-Semitism for 15 years in the US and in Canada, have all been amplified because exactly what we're seeing. This was not and is not a war between Israel and Hamas. That's maybe what Israel calls it. Hamas calls this a war between Hamas and the Jewish people. When they killed my own friends, some of whom I have videos because it was shared by Hamas on their WhatsApps and Telegram, they didn't call out Israeli when they killed my friends. They called out Yahud. This is a war with anti-Semitism. We need to battle anti-Semitism wherever it rears its ugly head, whether here in Israel, in the United States, as we're seeing every day, and across the world.
So in the United States especially, you hit the streets of Washington, D.C. to speak with people about this war, about whether they're pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. Let's take a look at the clip, and then I want to hear your reactions to it. So let's take a look at the clip.
Are you Team Israel or Team Palestinian?
Well, I'm Team Israel, but I'm Team for peace.
I just hope everything can get resolved, because it's territory, culture. We should all live in peace.
Are you Team Israel or Team Gaza?
Israel.
And why is that?
Because I think they're just looking for peace. I think they deserve it.
I support Israelis, and I'm very distressed at the civilians in Palestine.
Would you say that you're Team Israel, Team Palestine, Team
Palestine?
And tell me why.
I'm Palestinian.
Is this a war between Israelis and Palestinians? Is this between Hamas and Israelis, or Hamas and Palestinians? Like, who is this a war between?
I don't think I want to say anything on the TVs.
Who would you get in trouble with?
Here, I don't know. To be honest, I'm not sure where it's gonna go, who's gonna see it.
Yeah, I think I'm more Team Palestine.
What opinion do you have about the almost 10,000 rockets that Hamas sent into Israel, and that they took 245 Israeli and foreign hostages?
I mean, I really don't know too much of the situation. I don't really know the magnitude of the conflict.
How should Israel respond when it knows that Hamas...
Turn the water back on. They should turn the internet back on.
How much water does Israel provide Gaza?
I mean, my understanding is they...
10%. They control what I've learned.
Where's your source on that?
It's from the Gaza Health Ministry, from Egypt, from Jordan.
So why is there no water there?
There is water there, and Israel only provides 10% of the water to Gaza.
Anyway, you see where I stand.
They're surrounded by enemies that want to not just defeat them, they want to destroy them, and I think that they can't let this happen again.
Oh, of course, I'm Team Israel. It's a horrible thing. I think, but it's been an issue for a long time. Unfortunately, it got to this.
Okay, so interesting clip, and I want to hear your reaction. There are quite a few people who said they were pro-Israel, which is nice to hear. Some of the people who said they were pro-Palestinian didn't seem to know all the facts. I mean, so what is your overall impression of this?
Yeah, I think you said it exactly what it is. Many of the people who I spoke with who were anti-Israel or who are anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian or even pro-Hamas didn't have the information. And when I asked them why, with all due respect to them, to just ask them why those are their opinions and decisions, they were not able to back that with any information. One of the interviewees, because we created numerous videos that I can't wait for you to share, were with younger people who absorb their information from TikTok. We know that on TikTok, there is a vast tsunami, a vast ocean of anti-Semitic content, and it's completely outweighing the pro-Israel or the pro-Jewish content. One of the issues that has appeared, especially in these conversations with the people on the streets of Washington, D.C., and this was just a fraction of what we filmed, is so many people focus on the anti and pro. Those who are anti, I'd often ask them, well, what are you doing that's pro? What are you doing that is pro-Palestinian? What are you doing to support the Palestinian communities? And oftentimes, they didn't have an answer to that question.
And so it's really interesting because, you know, the war in Gaza, of course, here in Israel has stirred up very strong emotions. But abroad, it's really stirred up anti-Semitism and hatred and anti-Israel sentiment. You're talking about pro versus anti, strong anti-Israel sentiment in people who are not really connected to this conflict in any direct way. I mean, why do you think that is?
There are age-old tropes that have been passed on from generation to generation. Throughout my life, especially my work in the entertainment and media industries as an actor, as a director, as a news commentator, I would always hear Jewish jokes and comments about jokes about Jewish people as if it was just normal to be able to say that. Yet, the woke movement started as a movement to awaken people to what someone else's narrative is. Hear me and see me for who I am, for what I am, instead of telling me what I am. That and the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion movements, ended up focusing on other marginalized and victimized minorities while excluding the Jewish people. So it is still absolutely okay and acceptable to criticize Jewish people, even from a place of lack of information. What happened since October 7th is we are seeing a groundswell of this flood that's been happening for a long time. Anti-Semitism is not on the rise. It's already risen.
Yeah. All right, well, Yuval David, thank you so much for joining us today in the studio, and we, of course, will share the remaining videos in the coming days.
Thank you so much for having me and for everything that you're doing to share these narratives through the power of journalism to empower our people to know how to have the conversations, to know how to do the representation themselves. We are at a time where all of us are activists and advocates.
Thank you.
Toda raba.
And you've stayed up to date on the latest news in Israel, and now you can stay up to date on the Hebrew language too. ILTV is happy to introduce a new weekly segment, the Hebrew Word of the Week, where along with eTeacher, we'll learn a new Hebrew word relating to current events. And if you're interested in learning more about the Hebrew language, you can check out eTeacher by scanning the barcode on the screen below. So now let's take a look at today's Word of the Week.
Welcome to Hebrew Word of the Week. I'm Ariella, and in this segment, together with eTeacher, we explore the beauty and depth of the Hebrew language. We'll learn a new Hebrew word or phrase and see how it's used in the Bible, current events, and everyday life. Today's Hebrew word is tefillah, which means prayer. In Hebrew, prayer plays a significant role in connecting with one's spirituality and expressing gratitude, hopes, and intentions. Tefillah is a word that carries deep spiritual meaning in Hebrew. It represents the act of communicating with the divine, whether in moments of reflection, gratitude, or seeking guidance. In Hebrew culture, tefillah is a fundamental practice. Prayers are recited in synagogues and also individually by Jewish people worldwide. Here are some examples of how the word tefillah is used in a sentence. התפילה היא דרך להתחבר לאלוהים. Prayer is a way to connect with God. התפללתי לזה. I prayed for this. So if you're interested in learning more about the Hebrew language, check out eTeacher. This online and live course is the most established Hebrew language instruction institution. You can learn with a time-proven method for every level or start from scratch. eTeacher offers dynamic online courses with live video lessons, weekly webinars, and ample support, and allows you to connect to a lively global community for an enriched learning experience. Click the link below and visit the eTeacher website today to learn more.
Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, editor of All Israel News. Sign up for our free daily email for the latest news from Jerusalem. Go to allisrael.com.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country with lows of around 11 degrees Celsius or 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies and temperatures reaching highs of 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the weekend, cloudy skies and slightly rising temperatures. And that's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channel, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our new and improved website, ILTV.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Lidar Gravelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.